Oh no, drop it. Power panel. Cenk Uygur, John Idaho. Look at Bridget Todd's here. Everybody watch out, Bridget Todd. Communications director at Ultraviolet, not a big deal, leading national women's organization, kind of a big deal. She also hosts a podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, yet here she is. But okay, and the last one, last episode was fittingly about the Breonna Taylor and how the officer was part of that signed a book deal. But good news for you guys, we're also gonna talk about that today. Bridget, how you doing?
I'm doing great, so excited to be here.
Rock and roll, we're excited to have you. All right, so Johnny Pie, legendary Daddy Dragon. I'm ready to get right to it. You ready? Let's do it.
I'm less ready than I was before you said that, but I'm gonna push through, okay? The power panel, I can't just stop. Okay, let's talk about it. Throughout the week, people have been wondering what's up with that whole Joe Biden raising the refugee cap thing. Like he said he was going to do it. He promised it multiple times. And John Oliver had a great segment on his show last week tonight, asking him for him to actually do the thing that he said he was going to do. And lots of people started talking about it throughout the week. On the damage report, we did multiple segments on it. And so we wanted clarification. And earlier today, the Biden administration gave that clarification at long last. President Biden has decided not to lift the cap on refugees for the current fiscal year from the level set by the Trump administration, according to a senior administration official, abandoning a previous proposal to Congress to allow more refugees to come to the United States. Now, there is some breaking news, but not necessarily clarifying news. So we will get to that in a second, but I wanna give you the news that broke earlier today. Starting with what we said. In addition, he plans to keep the refugee cap at 15,000. That figures a historic low set by Donald Trump. So it's not even one human being more than what Donald Trump would allow. Earlier this year, Biden had proposed to Congress lifting the cap up to 62,500. He has pledged to raise it to 125,000 for the following fiscal year, which begins in October. Now that might sound like a huge increase, and I guess it sort of is only because of how much the cap has been lowered over the past few years, but it is very much in line with just the normal amounts of refugees that were being brought in during the latter years of the Obama administration. On that 62,500 number, one of the reporters for the Washington Post noted on Twitter that that number was actually a prorated figure for a fiscal year that was half over. An apples to apples comparison is that Biden had already pledged 125 and has now decided to stick with 15,000, which is, as she points out, a huge drop. Now, he is going to change the regional allocation of refugees. Under Trump's directive, strict restrictions were placed on accepting refugees on certain African and majority Muslim countries. So sure, the number might be basically zero, but it'll be basically zero people coming in from more countries. And many people, I think quite reasonably, lost it over this because not only did he make the promise during the campaign, and not only did he get goodwill by promising to turn against something that motivated a huge amount of anti-Trump sentiment, but even very recently, like during the town hall he did, what, like a month ago, he had this to say.
With me into Sierra Leone, come with me into parts of Lebanon, come with me around the world and see people piled up in camps, kids dying, no way out, refugees fleeing from persecution. We, the United States, used to do our part. We were part of that. That's, send me your huddled masses, come on.
Now, that might sound bad with the news of today, but bear in mind, he kept saying, come with me to those countries. He didn't say, then come back to the United States. Just stay there, I guess. Now, the press secretary did put out a sort of statement saying the president's directive today has been the subject of some confusion. Last week, he sent to Congress his budget for the fiscal year starting October 2021, which honors his commitment. For the past few weeks, he has been consulting with his advisors to determine what number of refugees could realistically be admitted to the United States between now and October 1st. Given the decimated refugee admissions program we inherited and burdens on the Office of Refugee Resettlement, his initial goal of 62,500 seems unlikely. So it's all about Trump, blah, blah, blah. While finalizing that determination, the president was urged to take immediate action to reverse the Trump policy that banned refugees from many key regions to enable flights from those regions to begin within days. Today's order did that. With that done, we expect the president to set a final increased refugee cap for the remainder of this fiscal year by May 15th. Which, look, that was pitched as clarifying what was already out there, but it definitely doesn't just do that. This seems like someone shifted into reverse and then just hit the gas there. And I hope this most recent update is the final honest commitment to raise it, but what do you both think?
All right, well, so let's understand why we did this, or as Joe Biden would say, come on. All right, so number of Republican votes he'll get by keeping Trump's brutal refugee camp, approximately 0, none. This is old 1990s way of thinking, triangulation. I'm gonna get Republican voters. It barely worked back then. It certainly doesn't work now. We're far too separated in our different tribes for Republicans to go, oh, I love the brutality of Donald Trump and Joe Biden gave me 5% of it, so I'm gonna vote for him instead of the next brutal Republican. It ain't gonna happen. So going an inch right wing is almost completely pointless. Yeah, there's some shades of independence in some suburbs, etc. But you're much better off turning out your base than trying to get 7 Republicans in the suburbs, right? But they've never understood that. By the way, Biden barely won this election. 43,000 votes in 3 states made the difference. So it's not like, oh, well, Biden won an election, so he must be a genius. No, he almost lost to Trump, okay? So now, why is he doing it? It is because of triangulation, and it's because of, this is really important, the media and pressure. So why do you think we're having a conversation about immigration and refugees? Because the right wing said, oh, crisis at the border, oh my God, there's too many immigrants in the country, right? And then all the media picked it up, and then Jen Psaki kept getting asked about it in the White House press conferences, and then next thing you know, it's the old Fox News trick. They talk about it enough, then CNN and MSNBC start talking about it, and they feel they need to react. Now, that's the giant push back from the right wing. And from the left wing, we got, as usual, the sound of silence, right? So since there was no pushback from the left, he's like, well, I got these guys locked up. They're totally veal penned. They're not going to criticize me ever on anything. So I might as well just start heading right wing, right? And if you're old school politician, that makes a lot of sense, right? That is why you need to create pressure from the left. Now, good news on this is, after he made this announcement, instantly there was pressure from the left. So AOC, Ilhan Omar, and others, thank you, stepped up to the plate and took on Biden very aggressively on this.
Yeah, Cenk, I completely agree with you. I think that this is an attempt by the Biden administration to sort of appease conservatives, but I don't think that that's ever going to happen. I think, this was a promise that he ran on and that people voted for him in a pandemic, might I add, based on this promise. And so I think he would be much smarter to really play to the people who turned out the vote, many of whom are black and brown folks, black and brown women who did the work of going out to vote and getting their communities to vote. I don't want to see Biden trying to kowtow to conservatives and Republicans just to sort of try to kind of woo their votes. I don't think it works that way. I think he's completely wasting his time and selling out the people who actually voted for him at the same time.
Yeah, and look, we will have to keep watching this to see what they end up doing. I've been looking at the press secretary's Twitter account, and it's a whole bunch of, oh God, why are you all freaking out? Like we got all these steps planned. We're gonna do all this great stuff. Okay, well then tell that to all of the sources inside of the administration that have spent the last week saying that Biden's terrified of political pressure and all of this. Like, it's senior administration officials. Sure, they could be totally making it up. Seems more likely that they're backpedaling. And I want this to potentially serve as a lesson to our audience who needs it less than pretty much anyone else. There was this, you can see it in the headlines. There's this belief that, well, Kayleigh McEnany was a massive liar, but now we've got a woman of perfect virtue who would never tell us a mistruth or anything like that. And oh God, look at the Saki bombs, they're awesome and all of that. No, she's a press secretary. She's a professional liar. She might lie a little bit less egregiously than Kayleigh McEnany. It would be difficult not to. That said, she is covering for Biden. That's it. And sure, in this case, maybe the end result is good, but we need to have an adversarial relationship. In this case, it seems like the adversarial relationship is the only thing that's gonna result in more refugees actually coming to this country. But now we need to apply the lesson of this to having Biden actually acknowledging the blockade in Yemen, actually making good on his promises around student loan debt cancellation, a ton of other things like that. And so hopefully this isn't the only instance where there will be a strong enough reaction to provoke him to actually make good on his promises.
Yeah, John, I just want to last couple of things here. One, I want to back up what you're saying about the White House spokespeople in 100%. So they all are, and the media pretends like they're all incredible truth tellers. It's absurd. It's a kabuki theater that they play. Jay Carney used to be Obama's press secretary. Then he went to work for Amazon, and he recently put out statements saying that, like, pretending that Amazon's more progressive than Bernie Sanders, and that he's for a higher minimum wage. Well, you had 8 years during the Obama administration to push for a higher minimum wage, and you never did. So yeah, of course. I mean, by the nature of that job is you've got to lie at least a little, but often a lot. And so now, in terms of the comment you made about Biden's panic, I think that's the most important one, because he's panicked about the reaction he's seeing in the media and the pushback he's getting from the right wing. Okay, now what does that tell you if you're on the left wing? That you should do likewise. That is how power is wielded. That is how you have leverage. And they don't respect you if you just sit there and go, oh yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Anything you want, sir. That means they ignore you. But if you create trouble for them, and on the left we can create good trouble, then they've got to respond. I'm gonna give the last word to one of our viewers here. If you're in the member section, sometimes we read your comments in the middle of a story, tyt.com/join to join. Colorado Blue Blazer Regular is a little bit more skeptical than we are, and wrote in, I wish my thesis was incorrect, but once again, it seems to be proven Republicans initiate violent punitive policies. Democratic administrations come in to normalize those vile policies.
Yeah. I mean, and I will try to keep it brief, but we can see that in a million different ways. Even like the re-raising of the corporate tax rate, like taking it down from 35 to 21 is insane. Taking it back up, not even the whole way. Oh, well, now responsible people are in charge. Anyway, I think we've got a thematic link between the story we just finished and the one we're about to start. So this is gonna be even more ironic than it initially was going to be, but let's move on to our next story. Some good news for everyone. I read in The Hill that Biden has won over skeptical progressives and everything's great between all the parts of the party. That is an actual headline. Like, just in general, there's no issues or anything. So let's see. What is the evidence that is provided? Because of course we have to be fair and evidence is provided. Well, 2 polls out earlier this week showed Biden's approval ratings at almost full support. A Quinnipiac University survey showed Biden with support among Democrats at 94%. That's the sort of level of support that Trump would just randomly lie about in a tweet. The results are surprising given the skepticism many progressives had for the 78-year-old Biden. But as he approaches the 100-day marker, Biden has been successful in uniting Democrats behind him. It is such a final statement. Like, oh, he's good now, because we passed the COVID aid bill. And so I guess everything's great, no lingering issues with the way that was handled or the lack of the raising of the minimum wage there. No future battles over the Green New Deal, anything like that. It's just done. He succeeded, Cenk. It's good to be able to move past that.
Yeah. So you know what though, but this story is nuanced because number one, I believe in polling. Number two, if you had asked me to guess, I probably wouldn't have guessed numbers that sky high, but close. I thought Biden is holding the whole Democratic Party really well for now. So now let me explain a couple of important distinctions. So number one, why is he holding the party together so well and is so popular throughout different wings of the party? Well, number one, first, because he deserves credit for doing some good things. The $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill was large and much larger than Obama's and was a positive step in the right direction. Now, he didn't do minimum wage, but that's gonna get to point number two in a second. And he proposed a large infrastructure bill, and he did some positive things we didn't expect, like a complete withdrawal from Afghanistan. So there are some real reasons for progressives to think, not bad, right? Secondly, and this is the most important part, almost no progressive has criticized Biden publicly. So that means there has been no media of progressives being upset with Biden. So if you're other than us, so if you're that 6% who's dissatisfied with him, probably all Young Turks viewers, and not because we're against him, but because we're sharing real facts with you guys about things he's doing right, but also things he's doing wrong and things that are not remotely progressive, right? So since none of the legislators are at all pushing back, not even 1% until this refugee cap situation, then everybody thinks, well, I guess everything's hunky-dory. So yes, right? Number three reason, it's a super low bar. After Trump, like anybody who comes in and is like not insane, we're like, yes, right? And number four is Republicans push back in so many insane ways, it makes all Democrats defensive. Right? So they're like, Biden is probably gonna be checked into a mental hospital at any moment, and the immigrants have taken over the entire country and replaced us with brown people. So in that context, do you like Biden or don't you? It's hard to vote no, right? If you're a Democrat. And so I think that begins to explain it. Now, I think the future is different, but I'll get to that after Bridget.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the other side, leadership on the right, the kinds of things that they're championing, attacking trans youth, they really have nothing to offer. And so I think by comparison, when we see Biden, who is trying, demonstrating that he is interested in governing and leading, I think people are, the bar is very low, like you said. I think especially coming from Trump, the bar is very low for what a leader looks like. I also think it's important to note that, he's having this support among Democrats after that COVID relief bill passed. I think that we need to see more of Biden leaning into these big policy changes that will actually have a positive impact on like American families. Most people in this country, things that we think of as progressive or radical, most people actually support those things. People want progressive policies. We want Medicare for all. We want to raise minimum wage. And so I think the times where Biden can really be in lockstep with what people actually want, I think it's going to serve everybody. But I completely agree. I was surprised to find these numbers as high as they were, but I think it is a little bit of an absence of leadership. So now we're just happy, and the bar can be a little bit low.
Yeah. I think.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I think look, you're totally right with the numbers. Which I was being probably needlessly snarky. It is 96%, but I would also say there's approval and there's approval. Like that is a blanket term that can be applied to varying shades of acceptance, especially during the, I think we have to acknowledge, honeymoon period of a new president and people, whether I can quantify it or not, being more checked out of politics than they've probably been in some time. So they did get the one big bill through. The idea that it seems like of low utility. Like, sure, the poll shows that largely Democratic voters are so far satisfied with him. But like, we can learn much more interesting lessons from the one battle that we've had over the COVID bill. What didn't make it in, what did? The issues with how that was managed in terms of the parliamentarian, the concerns over the power that people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, their outsized role inside of the Democratic Party. Like I alluded to earlier, the brewing battles over a ton of different issues, including, as is noted in this document, the minimum wage, arms sales, the defense budget, his approach to immigration, what he's willing to do and not do on gun control. There's a lot of things like this. Analyzing that just seems like it holds so much more utility for the future than hey, the poll shows that he's good. So I guess that Bernie's gonna be happy and not cause any problems in the future. I don't know, it seems like a weird stance to take after just a couple of months when we've only had one real fight so far. Like, talk about this after the first attempt to put someone on the Supreme Court, after a big battle over who that should be.
Yeah, so John, I hear you, but it's a snapshot. All polls are a snapshot, and I think it's an interesting snapshot. I don't mind it. It is what it is. And guys, we also have to be cognizant of not being too wrapped up in our own bubble. So we know we're neck deep in the news. We know all the details. We know what happened with the minimum wage fight. We know all that stuff. The average American, you got to remember, is a dentist, right? And so I've now made the average American a dentist, okay? So they're not following the news as closely as we are, or a lot of our audience is. So they just see whatever they see in a passing glance. And John, that $15 minimum wage thing is just the perfect example, because since Jayapal got all the progressives to stand down, and so did Bernie, by the way. Bernie was a huge part of that. And do not criticize Biden was the message that was sent out. Well, no one, unless they watched the Young Turks, saw that he even killed the minimum wage. And if you ask any reporter in DC now, is Joe Biden in favor of the minimum wage? Even though he helped kill it just a little while back, every reporter will say he's in favor of the minimum wage. And if you ask him why, they'll say, well, he said so. He said so, but he took it out of the bill at the drop of a hat, and he got the 2 Delaware senators to vote no on it. That means Biden doesn't want it. How many national reporters told you that? 0, because they're not good at their job, okay? And so, and when progressives don't push back, it doesn't make it into the media. Progressive legislators, because the media cares about legislators because they have power, right? And so that's why it seems like a kumbaya moment, and to some degree, that's how it starts out. But most importantly, guys, looking forward, the COVID relief bill was exceedingly easy. And so you were not, even Manchin and Sinema couldn't vote against COVID relief bill, right? And so they could put pressure on to make it worse, which they did, right? But they can't vote against it. And so now when we get to the infrastructure bill and we're talking about raising corporate taxes, Manchin and Sinema go, oh, hell no, I raise all my money from corporations. I will do whatever the Chamber of Commerce says. Now, is Biden really gonna fight back against that? Well, we're about to find out. And he says 2.2 trillion, that sounds like an okay number, good number to start with, right? Except that he's starting with it. So when Manchin goes boo, Biden's gonna take it down to 1.1 trillion before you know what hit you. And now all of a sudden you got a tiny infrastructure bill, relatively speaking. And then corporate tax rate, Biden said 28, not 35. Manchin's saying 25. They're gonna bring it to 25. That means Trump basically got his way. He got the giant section of enormous tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy. And Democrats, as always, will then look to make them permanent, okay? And that's a giant loss. So when Biden does Biden, which he's almost certainly gonna do when he runs into actual trouble, then we're gonna see what happens with progressives and what happens with these poll numbers. But I hope to God I'm wrong, and Biden's a new man, and he goes, oh yeah, I'm gonna break Manchin, I'm gonna end a filibuster, we're gonna pass HR 1, we're gonna pass the infrastructure bill, I'm gonna raise corporate taxes to 35, whatever it is. I'm here for it, I would love it, and then I would be 110% in favor of Biden. But knowing politics, Biden, and what we know, it's unlikely. So this kind of feels like George H.W. Bush at 91% after the Persian Gulf War, but that was the most perilous 91% you've ever seen. And it turned out that, of course, shortly thereafter, he lost the election.
Can I add something to that? Something I want to like this plus that you both have said is that I think most people, the dentists, as you just put it, Cenk, I think for a lot of people, especially coming out of the Trump administration, just want to be able to ignore the president, want to be able to ignore like the ins and outs of policy and how policy gets formed. And I completely get that inclination that after the last 4 years of chaos that we've had, why you'd want to just check out. I think a lot of folks are checked out of the ins and outs of how this kind of stuff gets done. And I really think that we should all really take ownership of staying checked in. So when Biden says something and you know that behind the scenes it's not actually coming to pass, being able to articulate how we hold him accountable and how we keep his feet to the fire, and not just saying, well, I read in the paper that he supports a $15 minimum wage, and I don't know, I guess he does. I think that I understand the inclination to be a little bit checked out, but I think now is the time we really need to be checked in.
Yeah, I'll give last word again to one of our members, tyt.com/join, to not only become a member, but become part of the show. So John I says 100% a lot, writes in, quoting Biden to donors, quote, nothing will fundamentally change. And then says, I didn't believe it, but it's not looking great, guys. $15 minimum wage, nope. Sticking it to MSB, nope. War in Yemen, yep. College debt canceled, nope. Kids in cages, yep. Better than Trump, barely. So now he's leaving out some positive things, as we talked about earlier in the segment. But are all the things he said true? Yes. And that's what an educated voter looks like.
Agreed. You want to take the first break?
Let's do it. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're probably going to talk about police abuse issues. Well, not probably, definitely, and racial issues. So my good mood will instantly dissipate, and we will have rage. You have that to look forward to.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Back during the break, is that a thing? It is a TYT. Back during the break? Okay, well, we're innovators, that's what we are, it's not a big deal. Meanwhile, time for American Heroes. LM just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Is she a bit of an American hero? I guess. And then so did Rose, I suppose. Is she a bit of an American hero? I suppose. And Sarah Diaz as well. You guys are wonderful. You make change possible and you make progressive programming possible. That's what makes you a hero. All right, I'm going to Twitch right away. What happened here? It's Friday, we're having fun. Elder Mind Pulse gifted 20 subs because they're a wonderful person. Dragon Penny gifted a sub, just equally wonderful. Tumbles 5 months with us. Tier 1 and gifted a sub. Look at all these gifters. Who doesn't like you guys? They have grifters, we have gifters. Lonely Soul gifted 2 subs. Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, gifted 5 subs. Generator says dancing emote, I'm ready. Who isn't? Okay, where's my dancing emote? Just Jen Period's been with us 10 months, says, love the new Twitch setup. Not even familiar with it, but I like that you like it. Poe the frickin' Rican Dragon, which is nothing but an excellent name, writes, keeping TYT independent with my Bezos bucks. Love you guys. Coolish Reagan, been with us 4 months, says, listening to We Got People, that's Ryan Grimm's book, which you could, by the way, find on shoptyt.com. And he continues, and I just got to the chapter where TYT joins the fight. Damn right, we're in the book. And Ryan's the only one who's ever given us credit for raising $2.5 million in that cycle for Justice Democrats and making a lot of that happen. That's why they take our calls now. Oh, right. Anyways, how come we're the you guys, like not us, you guys are the only donors they don't take calls of? Anyways, the Real Blue Tech gave 1,000 bits, and you guys are the best. I actually want to give a shout out to Barkley T, who watched yesterday. But Barkley, I see you, man. I see you. I'm still got your comment. I even wrote it down. Said, loving the community. We really do make this show together. Too strong. Love it. By the way, with us 6 years through tyt.com/join and 6 months on Twitch. Damn. 6 and 6 and Too Strong. Oh, look at this. I happen to have some Too Strong coffee with me right here, right in front of the camera. Huh. I guess they're progressive and organic and fair trade and delicious. And I guess you'd get them at toostrongcoffee.com/tyt. And I guess you'd really love them and help progressive causes, I guess. Okay. Hey, Thomas with a good point in our members section. Trump's approval rating was over 90% with the Republicans too. Doesn't make him a conservative. He was clearly a fascist. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Bridget with you guys. John, forward.
Let's do it. America is badly in need of a lesson in how to send money online without identifying yourself to investigators. Matt Gaetz is learning that, and we're also learning that as the result of a story in The Guardian about how some active duty cops, including in leadership positions, have been donating to vigilante killers' crowdfunding campaigns. We have a data breach to thank for this at GiveSendGo, a Christian crowdfunding website that's revealed that serving police officers and public officials have donated money to both the vigilante murderers, far-right activists, and fellow officers accused of shooting Black Americans. In many of these cases, the donations were attached to their official email addresses, raising questions about the use of public resources in supporting such campaigns. The beneficiaries include Kyle Rittenhouse, who stands accused of murdering 2 left-wing protesters in Kenosha last August. According to data from the site, he raised nearly $600,000 between the end of August and the beginning of January. One of those donations, which was for $25, was made on the 3rd of September last year, anonymously, but associated with the official email address for Sergeant William Kelly, who currently serves as the executive officer of internal affairs, the Norfolk Police Department in Virginia. You really got to wonder what GiveSendGo thinks anonymous means when they still list the person's email address. But anyway, he left a comment saying, God bless, thank you for your courage, keep your head up, you've done nothing wrong, every rank and file police officer supports you, don't be discouraged by actions of the political class of law enforcement leadership. Which is very sweet until you remember, oh wait, the reason that he knows who Kyle Rittenhouse is because Kyle Rittenhouse went somewhere he didn't belong with a gun he never should have had to kill 2 people. And then just drive away as if nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. First of all, I just have to say, it really is shocking to me how many police officers and public officials wanted to do something that they wanted to keep anonymous, but then still use their official work email address. So first of all, terrible idea. If you're trying to do something or give money to someone and be anonymous, maybe don't use your work email address, just a thought. But I really think that something that this really shows, all of these public officials and police officers donating money to someone who's accused of killing 2 people. When you think about policing, these are people who cannot be reformed. We talk so much about the criminal justice system and reforming it. You can't reform something that is this broken. These people are showing us who they are, and the whole thing is rotten. And I also think that, we talk a lot about bad apples, this is one person, this and that. These people who are racist They are working with your kids in schools. They are patrolling our neighborhoods. This is how they feel. People, the fact that this sergeant in Virginia said that he did nothing wrong when he's accused of killing 2 people, I think that we really got to take them at their word. These people who love to talk so much about law and order, yet are championing and supporting someone who's accused of murder. So I really think that we have to take these people at their word, that this is what they stand for. These are their values. And frankly, I'm not surprised to find out how many public officials and police officers have donated to folks like this, because that's who they are. These are people who cannot be reformed. The entire system is just completely bad. I was gonna swear, but not good.
Well, we appreciate you didn't. Okay, so to me, that quote from Sergeant Kelly, the most relevant part of it was when he talked about the political class of law enforcement leadership, because it goes to the mindset of these rank and file cops. They think, when leadership goes out there in the press conference and says, hey, we shouldn't shoot unarmed black people, they think they're just playing politics, man. Everybody knows we should shoot unarmed black people. And so only people who are being political would tell you not to do it. And they genuinely believe that. And it reminds me of the Trump voters. Like, hey, finally somebody's saying something everybody's thinking. No, everybody wasn't thinking the racist thing you were thinking. Just you were, and Trump was, unfortunately, about 40% of the country apparently was, right? But not 100% of the country. And so in this case, a lot of the cops, and you see that comment that Sergeant Kelly made, you see it pop up in different ways of phrasing it in a lot of these comments that were left, which is, it's just politics. But Kyle Rittenhouse, you went and murdered left-wing protesters to protect property of white people because you thought black people were gonna attack it. I mean, that's just like America 101. Thank God you murdered those left-wing protesters, right? And that's the mindset of, if you still think it's one bad apple, and it's just like Sergeant Kelly and a couple other guys who contributed, man, you're either totally clueless about what's happening. You've never read any of the news, that's okay. But it's the reality, right? Or you work in news and you're like, official sources say police are all good apples, except every story we cover about them doing horrible things over and over again. But golly gee, what am I, a reporter? I don't see a pattern. They tell me it's a few bad apples. I say it's a few bad apples.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we can look into how much cops from around the nation contributed to the families of the people Kyle Rittenhouse killed. Since there's way more good apples than bad apples, they must have raised a bunch of money for the actual victims in this case. He's also, it's such an extreme position. His position isn't, man, Kyle Rittenhouse, oh God, that's rough. But I guess at the end of the day, he was defending himself. No, it's, he didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing. I mean, first of all, he fled the state. That seems wrong. Even if you believe that he should have killed the people, he did try to not get caught, which seems kind of wrong. But anyway, Brett also wanted me to let you know that as bad as it would be for a guy in internal affairs in a police department to be this horrendously wrong about murder, this is also the area where the Army lieutenant had guns pulled on him. I don't know that this is the police department that is going to be investigating that, but it is not impossible to think that this is the sort of person that looks into use of force incidents to determine if they were acting appropriately, when this guy thinks blatant murder and then fleeing the scene is appropriate behavior. More than appropriate, it's worthy of hundreds of thousands of dollars of crowdfunding. In any event, there are a number of other donations going to different cops, including the cop that shot Jacob Blake. And if you want, on The Guardian, they break down many of these cases. But this is a big thing. Huge amounts of money are changing hands. And it just continues, I think, the thread that we saw with Kyle Rittenhouse a couple of months ago, where he was getting like deals with like online companies and things like that. People want to have these vigilantes on their shirts. They really do admire and look up to the people who are willing to go and kill.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. It's really harmful and dangerous and frightening when you think of the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't live in the state. He traveled across state lines to protect someone else's private property. And when you have these law enforcement officials praising this kind of behavior, you are basically going out and saying, we support the public taking the law into their own hands. If you feel like you have been wronged, take up a weapon and go patrol your street. They're basically giving their support to dangerous, murderous, violent vigilantism. And we should all be afraid of that kind of precedent being set by our public officials.
Well, and of course, Bridget, it's only one-way street, right? So imagine if black people had taken up arms, gone to a right-wing protest, murdered a couple of right-wing protesters, and then fled the scene. Yeah. How do you think Sergeant Kelly's of the world would have reacted to that?
Oh my God, can you even imagine? First of all, if black people took up arms and like went to the streets, the Second Amendment would be abolished overnight. Can you imagine how some of these people would just respond? You certainly wouldn't have them giving money to their legal defenses and things like that. It's even just thinking about it is absurd. So obviously it is not a two-way street. Basically what they're saying is if you're white and a male and aggrieved, take up arms and go patrol, and we support that. And if you get caught, we'll say you did nothing wrong. We'll say God bless you. We'll say that you have our support, and that's really the message that they're sending.
Yeah. And speaking of fleeing, Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times. That's what started this in the first place. And all those right wingers and all those cops said he had it coming. He was going towards the car. There might have been a weapon in the car. And later, in hindsight, we found a knife somewhere in the car to justify a shooting. We never saw the knife. We never, we just saw a black man who turned his back, so we shot him 7 times. And they're like, well, he had it coming. He was fleeing. Dante Wright just killed for fleeing. Kyle Rittenhouse flees. You did nothing wrong. And Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't unarmed. And Kyle Rittenhouse actually did kill people. And they're like, well, of course, fleeing makes sense. I mean, there's left wingers, there's black people there. Poor guy, right? And so
at TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
I'm not remotely surprised to see cops all across the country supporting Kyle Rittenhouse, even though he's a vigilante. And as Bridget pointed out, that should be among the top people that law enforcement is concerned about. But it's more about race than it is, of course, about actual rules and precedent and any of that stuff. And by the way, of course, they sent money to Rustin Shesky as well, who's the officer who shot Jacob Blake. So the huge percentage of that police department and other police departments across the country are like, attaboy, way to shoot him in the back. Okay, you did nothing wrong. Anyone who thinks you shouldn't shoot a black man in the back for 7 times is playing politics.
Yeah, and how many other professions can you think of where when someone is accused of doing something wrong, so when an educator does something wrong, how many professions are there where it's completely normal for your other coworkers to sort of rally around you and support you in that wrongdoing? Usually when someone is outed for, doing something bad on the job, their coworkers want them to be outed so that they don't, tarnish the rest of the profession. Sure. I think it's really interesting how we've just accepted that when a police officer shoots and kills somebody, that other police officers just support them and rally around them and, go out of their way to make it clear that they don't think anything bad happened.
Yeah, no, I love that point by Bridget. And never really thought about it that way. It's not like if you found a child molester who was a dentist, all other dentists would be like, way to go, man. Okay, no, we got a thin dentist line and we're all gonna rally around him. There's only 2 professions, cops and apparently coaches. Or some people involved in athletics. Man, they cover up for doctors and coaches and etc. And that's unfortunately a giant pattern as well. And by the way, Jim Jordan, a wrestling coach, covered up for rampant child molestation of a fellow coach. Why? Not a boy. I mean, they probably had it coming, right, man? Oh, yeah, that'll show them. right? And so that, let alone apparently all the people who knew about Matt Gaetz in Congress. He was showing the pictures to half the people in Congress. Nobody ever did anything. So what's the pattern here? Pattern is powerful right-wing white men who cover for each other, saying there isn't anything that we could do that we would consider wrong, because we're not judging based on the merit of your character or your actions. We're just judging based on whether you're one of us or one of them.
Yeah. I just want to throw out one other number before we go probably to our second break. The idea that Jacob Blake might have gotten a knife is enough for virtually every conservative in the country to say that he had to be shot. They don't really complete the thought. They just want you to believe, without them having to say, that Jacob Blake was totally going to go into the car, get a knife, and then he was going to rush at an armed police officer to stab the police officer to death. That's presumably what he was going to do. They don't want to say that because that sounds insane, but and because someone might get a knife is enough that obviously you should just start shooting people in the back if you think they might have something. I'm looking at the numbers in the Officer Down Memorial page for 2020. There were 343 deaths in the line of duty. 222, 2/3, were from COVID. They don't give a damn about, it's 5 times the number from all gunfire. But they don't care at all about doing anything to limit those numbers. Like, they won't even put cloth on their face to get those numbers down. But they believe that you should be able to preemptively murder people because of what were there, like 4 stabbings or something? I don't know. It's just weird what we consider to be threats and what we think is worth actually acting to stop. Anyway, we are getting late into the hour, so I assume we should probably take our second break.
All right, rock and roll, let's do that. And when we come back, unfortunately, we got more where that came from. But we're gonna give our perspective on it. So let's come back. All right, back during the break, I found out what we did on Twitch. We got the overlay. How fun is that? Did you get to see the comments? I like it. Apparently you like it. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Okay, Good Bean has been with us for 3 months using Amazon Prime. I don't know if you guys know this. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you on Twitch, but we get the revenue anyway. That's called Bezos bucks. It wasn't, but it is now. Okay, Good Bean wrote in, good evening all, love TYT and TDR. That's of course John's show. And then look at all these people gifting subs. So Staring gifted 5 subs. AJ Duenas says always 5 subs. Crazy Hawaiian, could be in Pennsylvania. I don't know, could be. Gifted a sub. Inca Dragon gifted 2 subs. BC Trumpet gifted 5 subs and 600 bits. We like the bits. The bits are helpful. They sound tiny, they're actually really important. Serious Business gifted 2 subs. A Florida Dragon gifted 5 subs. So hey, look, something good coming out of Florida. Cypher Shadow Dragon gifted a sub, and Maple Dragon gifted 2 subs. Now I'm going to YouTube Super Chat. No Nune Consequence, or no one of consequence, something along those lines. Anyway, says not even Jim Gordon supported Batman this blindly, and that's a comic book and freaking Batman. So that's a pretty good point. It's true, Batman gets like challenged and questioned way more than normal cops do in real life. Goblin Dragon. Every once in a while, they'll be like, Batman's like Moses. Every once in a while, they're like, I don't know, man, maybe we should build a golden calf. Okay, so anyways, Goblin Dragon, this is his opinion, not mine, just writes in, ACAB. Okay, Brandon Butler says, Cenk, when is your new book coming out? Why, thank you for asking. Unfortunately, the answer is I don't know. Is it coming out? I guess. No, I'm kidding. It's definitely coming out, but am I positive of the date? Unfortunately, I'm not. Is it causing me stress? Yes. But do I like you asking about it? Yes, I still do. Why? I'm going to tell you where you can get it. You can pre-order it right now. It's called justiceiscomingbook.com. Okay. The book is called Justice is Coming, but in order to get the URL, we had to go justiceiscomingbook.com. You get it. By the way, the more popular it is in pre-sales, the more it moves up the rankings when it comes out. Better progressive books do. The more progressive books we have. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying John Iadarolla's book depends on it. I'm just saying, okay?
Careful what you wish for. Do you know what I'm writing about right now? I don't know if that's what we want to associate TYT with. Anyway.
No, I don't even want to know. I'm kidding. What are you writing about?
It's a fantasy novel set in a world of no humans, just animals, like Redwall.
Okay, it's got some.
It's not politics.
It's got a furry feel to it. I'm not saying anything. I haven't said a word.
Technically true.
Okay, AKA Puffle Cloud just signed American Hero Puffy Cloud. Yes. Back on TYT, Cenk, John, Bridget, awesome, forward.
Okay, let's do it. One of the unfortunate constants in America seems to be that when you are a right-winger, you're involved in some sort of needless tragedy or death, there's gotta be some way to monetize it. We just got done talking about crowdfunding. Well, there's other ways, including book deals. And one of the cops who was involved in the no-knock raid that resulted in Breonna Taylor's death apparently had a memoir ready to go. Post Hill Press had agreed to publish Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly's The Fight for Truth, the inside story behind the Breonna Taylor tragedy. It was to be distributed by Simon & Schuster, which has said in a statement earlier Thursday that it had no editorial control over book releases by smaller publishing houses for which it provided third-party distribution. A spokesperson for that press said, in the case of Sergeant Mattingly, the mainstream media narrative has been entirely one-sided related to this story, and we feel that he deserves to have his account of the tragic events heard publicly as well. Post Hill Press is standing behind our decision to publish his story. A lot of people obviously had an issue with that. Many tweets. We're gonna show you one from Attica Scott who says, "Stay focused, y'all. People love to profit off of Black pain and tragedy. It sells." And it looked like that was all that there was going to be, but eventually, because of the pressure potentially, Simon & Schuster put out a statement saying, like much of the American public, earlier today, Simon & Schuster learned of plans by distribution client Post Hill Press to publish a book by Jonathan Mattingly. We have subsequently decided not to be involved in the distribution of this book, despite earlier saying that they have no power to influence that. They apparently found it deep within, and they will not be involved in distributing it.
Yeah, I have a really hard time believing that statement from Simon & Schuster. That's almost exactly what they said when there was a big controversy about them publishing Josh Hawley's book. So I'm very skeptical that that's actually what's going on. And I'm so happy that they eventually said that they were not going to have a role in the distribution deal of this book. But I really think this is one of those stories where we really have to stick with it and ask a lot of probing questions, because Simon & Schuster is a huge company. They have so many different subsidiaries. And so my question is one of their subsidiaries going to be involved in this distribution relationship? Like, will they actually have no part of it, or will it be something else? And so I just have a really hard time taking Simon & Schuster at their word that they found out about this when the public did. They seemed in their statement to almost say that they found out about this book publishing deal on Twitter, which again, I guess that's what they're saying, but I have a really, really difficult time believing that that's actually how one of the biggest book publishers in the world is doing business. So I really want to make sure that that is clear. Even though they say that they are not gonna have part in it, I wanna make sure that that is actually what happens, that it's not just, oh, well, Simon & Schuster will not be involved in the distribution of this book, but our other subsidiary, well, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how many other presses they do the distribution for. I mean, that would be a very interesting additional story. I don't know. I do, considering the public conversation, it seemed a bit late in the game to be saying they're just finding out about it. So, but I don't know for sure. Cenk?
Yeah, there is one possibility, guys, that it could be that this is more of a contractual competitive thing. And so I don't know their relationship with Post Hill Press at all, but the way that they mentioned them, it sounded like, hey, we're finding out he had a secret deal with someone else. And so were less mad about the social context of it and more mad about the contractual context of it. So that could be it too. So they could genuinely be mad, but perhaps for the wrong reason. But I don't know. I don't have enough information about that. A comment that I found interesting is the word deserves in the quote that John read you, right? Mm-hmm. He deserves to have his voice heard. The way I read it was, he deserves to make money off this too. And so he's also suing Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. Breonna Taylor is suing because he was shot at and he had done nothing wrong, and his girlfriend was murdered right in front of his eyes, and she had done nothing wrong, and they barged into their house and etc. Mattingly got hit by Walker in exchange of gunfire because Walker, they didn't announce themselves apparently, and Walker thought they were real intruders, and so Mattingly is saying, yeah, I want to get paid off that too, because it hit my leg. So I don't care that we were wrong in busting in. I don't care that we had the wrong people. I deserve to get paid. So I'm going to sue the guy suing that because I think he's going to get a lot of money because it's obvious we were wrong. And then I want to take a piece of his money that he gets for how wrong I was. And then I want to write a book about it and get money on that because I deserve it.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, he probably genuinely feels that way. He probably feels like, I am a beloved cop. I bust into the wrong black house. So what? We do it all the time. And they probably did something wrong anyway. That's what Trump said about the Central Park Five after they were found to be innocent, right? And then I got shot in the line of duty just because we were in the wrong house and murdered the wrong people. Big deal. I deserve money, and he probably deeply believes it. And by the way, he will probably get it. And a lot of right wingers will be like, "Yes, tell me that book about how you were the victim."
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's interesting that he is one of the things he's suing her, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend for, is emotional distress. As if having a horde of police officers come into your home while you're asleep, like guns out, is not emotionally distressing. As if seeing your partner lying dead is not emotionally distressing. And I completely agree with that tweet that you read, that this is an attempt to further capitalize on and profit on Black death. I think it's really disgusting. I agree with you also, Cenk, that I think that he probably deeply, deeply believes that he should be compensated for what happens. I think that, he after Breonna Taylor's death, he put out a statement that was like, we did nothing wrong. We did the ethical thing this night. I don't think it's occurred to him that he did anything wrong. I don't think it's occurred to him that he should not be making a quick buck off of the woman that he murdered as she laid in her home.
Yeah. But again, to be fair to him, not on a moral stance at all, but financially, it's probably the correct decision. There's tons and tons of racists in this country who will eat that book up. Oh, you went and killed the wrong Black person. Tell me more.
Are there? Yeah. There's definitely tons of racists, and there's definitely tons of money. I mean, clearly the last story about the crowdfunding proves that. And I get that I apparently have a terrible read on what America wants to read. I mean, in the break, I told you what I'm writing. Clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about. But do they want to read the book? Like, people want to read what this sergeant has to say. Like, they're going to sit down in a chair with this book and they're going to read it. I'm not even joking. Like, seriously, I don't think that exists. I don't think many of these are actually published with the intent that they're going to be read. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm in a bubble, but I just read about the massive, like, huge advance that Mike Pence is getting. Who's reading that book? Like, I get that those books will sell. We've done a number of stories about, the think tanks and all that do massive buys of books and then supposedly send them out to people who are not going to read them. But like, somebody's sitting down and reading Mike Pence's book cover to cover, real page turner. He's at least famous. Who is this cop? Who cares about his perspective? I really don't think anyone was going to read this. Now, that doesn't mean that, like, they were under some obligation not to publish it. It's all down to the company, and I feel like people can put pressure on them one way or the other if they want to. But I just don't think that the country is filled with people who are desperate to read this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, think about this, that after George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin, he became kind of a minor celebrity in some conservative pockets. For a while, he was selling his paintings. People were paying thousands of dollars for George Zimmerman's original artwork. So I agree with you. I don't think anybody is really sitting down and I don't think anybody has the desire to really sit down and thumb through this guy's life story. I think just like when we were talking about with the crowdfunding, I think there are some people out there that want to make their support known by throwing money at people who, target Black folks. I really think that's it. I think they want to use their dollar to say, we endorse this.
Yeah, I mean, see if you can find a pattern. Right, George Zimmerman kills Trayvon Martin for no good reason and makes a ton of money. Kyle Rittenhouse kills 2 left-wing protesters, going in armed to go after Black protesters, etc. Crowd raises a ton of money for his legal defense. Trump targets Black people all the time, raises a ton of money. Now that's a little bit different because it's political and they raise a lot of money anyway. But if you kill left-wing protesters or Black folks in this country and you write a book about it, your chance of making a lot of money is unfortunately quite significant. Whether they actually read the book or not, it's just kind of like a moral support, like, oh, you killed someone based on their race. Just want to send you a shout out. So here's $25, take it. Totally. And John, the other thing is real quick, John makes a great point. Right-wing think tanks buy books in bulk. So the publishers like Simon & Schuster, they're deeply incentivized to print right-wing books because it's guaranteed book sales. The think tanks are funded by billionaires who want to push out propaganda. They buy books to make them #1 bestsellers, which then gets them in the media. And then the author goes on all the television stations and no one actually reads the book, but the author being on all those media because he's on the bestseller list gets out their propaganda. So for them, that little piece of marketing is well worth it because they're gonna get giant tax cuts and all the other things that they want, right? On the left wing, there is no such apparatus. So that's why you'll see a lot more right-wing books and less progressive books because of that perverse financial incentives.
Yeah, it's a perverse money machine. That's such a good point. We don't have anything like that on the left, really, where we're fueling that kind of money and that kind of system. I think you're right. I don't think we really have that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, so it's unfortunately or unfortunately up to you guys to buy justicescomingbook.com. That's my book. I don't know, did I just make a plug for it? I guess. But it's actually for justice. So justicescomingbook.com. You could pre-order. I'm not saying anything except the words I've spoken.
I think that's unfortunately all the time that we have, Cenk.
All right. Well, look, guys, you guys understand at this point that Bridget is awesome. You, unlike the right wing, are not dense. You've understood that. And so what I need you to do is to go check out our podcast, which is, of course, ironically named "There Are No Girls on the Internet." And Bridget, it's got a little bit of a STEM theme to it or part to it.
That's exactly right. Basically, we unpack all the ways that women and underrepresented voices are impacting the internet and technology. So please check it out. We'd love to have y'all.
All right, excellent. And she's also communications director at Ultraviolet. Support that group as well. All right, and John, of course, Daddy Dragon at the Damage Report. But everybody's already checking out the Damage Report. You all know it. You all love it. We're going to leave it at that. Okay, when we come back, we got a whole new power panel, including old friend Mark Thompson. Oh, everybody wants to see him. You know it. Come right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.